My name is Charles Wong, and I'm here to talk to you today about different types of product management. From the slide here, you can see that I work at WeWork, and there's been a long progression along the way. First thing I always tell fledgling product managers or people who aspire to be a product manager is figure out if product management is the actual role that you're very interested in pursuing. Because I will tell you that it is a highly glorified job. I think a lot of people talk it up quite a bit, but you really need to figure out if the things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis are really going to fit within what you enjoy doing a job as well. And I will tell you that the reason I'm telling you this is because I had the same thought process when I was graduating from college. When I graduated from college, I noticed that all of my friends all of a sudden wanted to either become a consultant, an investment banker, a product manager, or something else. And that degree of groupthink got me really perturbed, or it made me doubt what was going on, and it made me question why they wanted to be product manager. Product management actually is like an amalgamation of a couple of skills that have to do a lot with working with people, figuring out what their needs are. And there's a bunch of skill sets that you dive and put together in order to become successful. And you won't be able to apply the same skills at every company. I think that's going to be one of the key takeaways from my presentation today. The reason why there are different types of product managers is because you need different types of skills to succeed in different organizations. So I'm going to go through a basic agenda. I always like to start my presentations by giving you a visual roadmap of what I'm about to go through. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'll tell you a little bit about what a typical product manager does. I'll talk about technical versus non-technical PMs. I know it's a very hot topic that a lot of people like to ask about. I'll talk about different types of product managers. I'll summarize in an end slide, and then I'll open it up for questions in the end. A little bit about myself. So I was born in Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan, and I used to take my introductions all the way back. And I grew up in Long Island, New York. And after that, I moved to Massachusetts, where I studied at MIT. At MIT, I studied finance, management science, and I minored in Chinese. I also took computer science classes while I was there as well. And I minored in economics. And after I graduated, I had that story that I told you where everyone wants to be a consultant or an IBM or a product manager. And I would ask them why they wanted to do so. And most of the reasons I heard were it seems very prestigious. I had to fly around for free, travel, visit different offices, all that stuff. It sounded like a bunch of just bull, in my honest opinion. So what I did is I just applied to a big company for a very junior position and just tried to see what I could do in order to learn more. My ultimate goal when I graduated was to figure out if product management was the actual role that I really wanted to pursue. So I applied to Google, and it's actually a very funny story of how this happened. I applied to Google on a whim because I honestly did not think I was going to get it. My roommate at the time noticed that I was on YouTube quite a bit, and he would tell me, Charlie, you're on YouTube all the time, you should apply to YouTube to see if you get it, just try it out. So I go on the Google website, and lo and behold, there's an opening for an online media associate. Online media associate program. It's kind of a rotational program to teach you about the advertisement business within Google. And I applied. One thing led to another. 6 months later, it was a very strenuous interview process. I got a call when I was in Taiwan, actually visiting my grandparents at 3 a.m. in the morning. And I'll never forget it was Brian. His name is Brian Peterson. And he called me and he said, Charlie, this is a good time. And I woke up half groggy on the bed. I said, yeah, this is great. He's like, congratulations, you got the job. And I instantly shot up, and it was a very happy moment within my grandparents' apartment. So when I first started at Google, I actually worked on the legal policy team as a policy associate. What I would do was look at the way Google ads were served on the internet, and I'd write up legal policies for what types of content those ads could not be served against. So to explain this, why are ads important to Google? Ads are the main way that Google makes money, but it needs to make sure that it makes money in a legal and in a very humane and ethical manner. So you cannot show ads against sites with violent content, hate content, adult content. Google does not want to be known as a company that's profiting off of very unethical things. So what we would do is write policies for what types of things the ads cannot be shown against, and we also wrote policies for what is the maximum number of ads ads that you can show on a page. If you've seen 7 ads on a search page before, I apologize. Like I was actually involved in that decision. But yes, those were the things that we looked at. This was actually one of the best learning experiences of my life because when I was working on the legal team, I got to learn that the legal team is usually like the biggest blocker to anything that occurs within a company. For good reason. I'm not disparaging the legal profession. I actually love lawyers. And I realized that the product managers, anytime they had a new feature that they wanted to push out, they had to come talk to me because they need to make sure that there was a legal representative that would be willing to sign off on what they were able to do. With that, I saw an opportunity to really connect with product managers that were going to push out these new features. And there was this one gentleman by the name of Johan who was a product manager that I really respected. The reason for this is because he would always approach the meetings and say, Charlie, I understand that from a legal department's perspective, you need these things to be achieved. You don't want these things to be realized. And he would say, I have a new feature and it's going to do this, and this aligns with your perspective. He wouldn't come to me and say, I just need to approve this thing because you're like the last person on the list before I can launch this feature. And that, to me, was like a brilliant method of product management. So I figure out what the shared and common interests are amongst multiple groups. So I asked Johan if he'd be willing to mentor me in product management because that was one thing that I thought I would be interested in. And that was the first opportunity I really dug into what is the discipline of product management. And he told me, it's not as sexy as you think it is. What you do is you need to talk to a bunch of customers, figure out what they need. You need to listen to them, but customers will usually tell you solutions to the problems, but that might not be the immediate thing to do. What you need to do is listen to their problems and figure out what is the ultimate problem you're trying to solve, and work with the engineering team to figure out what's the way to solve that problem. And it involves a ton of negotiation. It involves a ton of face-to-face time and meetings in order to gain more and more data. And it involves some decision-making, usually based on data that you collect. And what happens is, anytime a product launch or anything goes really well, you get none of the credit for it. It actually all goes to, anyone want to guess who all the credit usually goes to? It goes to the engineering team, because they're the ones that actually built it. And when a product fails, guess who usually gets all of the blame? Yes, the product manager usually gets all of the blame. And that was something that was very real to me. I had to notice that this was something that was going to be an honest truth. However, I noticed that the product managers were usually the folks who are pulling like that chain to get like something moving, and they're usually the one in the beginning pointing towards the direction. Obviously, you have team members behind you sharing that road that you're trying to pull. But to me, that was very compelling. So afterwards, I told Johan that I was looking to move to New York. When I was working at Google, I was in Mountain View at the time. And I told him I was looking to move to New York, and I asked him who are some mentors that I should talk to in New York office. And he pointed me to one of the directors of product management, who was actually his manager at the time. His name was Brad Bender, and he was the director of ads, display ads within Google. Lo and behold, there was an opening on the internal job posting board for an admin assistant. We later renamed to an administrative business partner for these 4 product management directors in the New York City office. And Brad was one of them. So I saw that as like a sign of destiny showing up, saying that this is probably an opportunity, chance for me to dive into. So I sent Brad a message and I said, hey, I would like to apply for this role. I just want to let you know that I will definitely do the responsibilities of the administrative business partner, but I have no intention of doing this forever. I actually want to be a product manager. And Brad actually chuckled and said, you're crazy, let's do this. So I moved to New York and I wanted supporting Brad as well as the 3 other product management directors. And it was very interesting because when I was working with Johan back in California, I got to see a lot of the day-to-day skills of what product managers do. And when I worked with Brad and the rest of the directors, I got to see the mental chess game they usually need to play with competitors outside in the world. So that was a very unique learning experience. After that, I worked with these directors for 2 years, and I was introduced to a company called Orchard Platform. It was a fintech company, and they were trying to build a secondary marketplace at the time. And I took a leap of faith because one of the product management directors told me, if you ever want to like really get into this, you should just join a startup and just like put your neck on the line and just try it. Jump in the frying pan. It's the fastest rate at which you're ever going to learn. So I joined the Orchard Platform, and I was there for about 6 months because I thought that I was coming in as a junior product manager, and it became very clear that they were looking for a director of product management. So I got the axe in 6 months. I got fired just immediately. And it was a very important lesson for me because it taught me that it's not always going to work out well like some Hollywood movie, but it gave me time to reflect and think about what were things that I could have done better. During that time, after the day I got fired, I actually called my parents and just told them what's up, I'm going to come home and hang out. But when I was on the train going home to Long Island, I also texted my former managers at Google. And I actually talked to one who was giving me the most advice at the time. And I said, real sorry I let you down, I just want to let you know I just got let go. And he said, don't worry, sometimes things just don't work out. What are you doing this next Monday? Because I just started this new company and we work on machine learning products. And I said, I'm obviously just looking for a new job, so it's coming on Monday, we'll see what we can do. So that's when I joined Mighty TV. And Mighty TV, I don't know, has anyone heard of Mighty TV? You have? Okay, that's awesome. So Mighty TV was a machine learning mobile recommendations app. And it's an iOS and Android app. I used to describe it as Tinder for Netflix. You would swipe left and right on movies and TV shows, and a machine learning algorithm would recommend new things that you'd like to watch, based on what subscription services you sign up for, like Netflix, HBO, Hulu, Amazon Prime. And when I was working there, it was a 9-person company, so I had to do everything. And I made it very clear that my intention was to work within product management, and we had an iOS app that was out at the time, and I was responsible for launching the Android app. What we had to do within Mighty TV was a lot. So I was working on launching the Android app. I also was responsible for user data analytics. So who's heard of Mixpanel before? Who uses Mixpanel? Okay, so Mixpanel, for those of you who are not familiar, is like a dashboard data visualization product. So you can see how many people are using your product, what types of features or parts of the app people are using. And it was important to our team because we needed to know what components of the app were most useful to folks. And what was the usual path that a user would go through in the app? In essence, going through the data is understanding what the users are doing, is getting as close to the user as possible through quantitative measures. We also held user research interviews to figure out when there was a new feature, you had to sit with strangers off the street and ask them, what are some of your viewing experiences like? We've been working on a new feature, please walk through this and tell us what you think about it. Who's ever done a user research interview? It is one of the oddest things I've ever come across in my life because you can't explain to the user what the app or the thing is going to do because you need to let them figure it out themselves. That's how you know that the feature was designed very well. So in the very beginning, I would sit across the table and just look at them struggle, and I would just want to jump across the table, shake them on the shoulders, and just say, just get it! Like, just get what we're trying to do. But that reaction I've learned as a result is, it just means that we didn't design it as well. It wasn't intuitive enough as it could have. So there, within Mighty TV, I picked up a couple of skills. I actually drafted legal policies because of my legal experience at Google. I worked on launching the Android app. I worked on the user analytics to figure out what's going on. We held user research interviews to adjust the machine learning algorithm that I was talking to engineers about. And finally, I was responsible for managing the social media campaigns to grow our subscriber base. And we were doing that for about 1.5 years, and then we wound up getting acquired by Spotify. And within Spotify, I worked on their data platform. What we were trying to do at the time was, when I joined, Spotify was still a private company, and they needed to basically mature up all of their data so that they can go public. So what we did is we started to build a single source of financial revenue truth so that we can present the right numbers to the SEC in order to say that we were making the amounts of money that we were promised. So we were doing that for about 1.5 years, and building a single source of truth of data is one of the biggest buzzwords you're ever going to hear in any company. It is very difficult because usually companies are like semi-small kingdoms or fiefdoms where people like own and control different things. But when you want to build a single source of truth for revenue, you need to like connect with a lot of people, and many different people have many different personality types. You need to figure out like how to help everyone march towards a common direction. So I was at Spotify for about 1.5 years, and then later on I was approached by the hiring team at WeWork. And anyone familiar with WeWork? Or yeah, okay, cool. WeWork was trying to build, or they are building, like the next IoT generation. And I will admit, when I first got the call, I asked them, are you a technology company? What are you all trying to build? And they basically sold me on the dream. Basically, the things that we're trying to do at WeWork right now, with like a lot of IoTs and sensors, is try to figure out how to connect all the 4 walls you're ever going to be within. So we have properties, we have WeWork properties for office spaces, we have WeLive. Has anyone heard of WeLive? It's kind of like for apartment and residential buildings. We also have Rise by We. Anyone heard of Rise by We? Yeah, it's like a gym and a fitness facility. I'm glad to hear it. And then we also have the Flatiron School. Have anyone heard of the Flatiron School? So anytime you're going to be in like some sort of small, not small, like four-walled area, there's a way where we can get involved and build community within those areas. And if you can imagine a world in the future where you're exercising in the Rise by Week, right? And you might have like really like went overboard on like a leg exercise. What we can do is figure out that in that facility, you may have injured your leg, so that when you go to your office in the morning, your chair might automatically adjust so that it places less stress on your leg. And your desk might also adjust to a height that is easiest for the neck and the posture. The operating system, it usually like preloads into your machine. And then when you go home, like the temperature sensors, the humidity sensors, all those things adjust so that you recover as quickly as possible. These are the types of things that we're looking into, and it can be very interesting. And obviously we're going to do this in a very privacy, safe, and compliant way. And these are the types of things that really sold me on the dream of what we're trying to do within WeWork. And at WeWork right now, I should have started with. So I work as a senior product manager, and I work on a data platform and infrastructure team. What we do, who's familiar with like what data infrastructure, like data platforms do? Okay, cool. What we need to do is basically make sure that all the information that goes through all of our computer systems are done very efficiently, quickly, accurately, and safely. So, you know, there are a lot of things where there's like data warehouses where you need to like process analytical information to show how many users are within a certain building, how much money a certain building is making, or where are the high growth areas that we should really invest in. So that's a little bit about myself. So what does a typical product manager do? Raise your hands, like, or shout out. What are some of the things that you think product managers do? Yes?
Prioritization.
Yes, prioritization. Yes, very good, very good. Anything else?
Stakeholder management.
Stakeholder management, yes.
I was going to say task management.
Task management, yes, yes. No? Okay. What does a typical product manager do? I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of buzzwords that people use: prioritizations, creating roadmaps, managing stakeholders, coming up with task execution, coming up with a vision and a strategy. It's all of those things and none of those things at the same time. Because every different company that you go to are going to prioritize different things. I'll tell you, like, within WeWork right now, vision and strategy is extremely important because we need to make sure we have a very robust, grandiose, almost a little scary kind of dream. Within Spotify, what we were trying to focus on is execution, because there was a very important thing that we need to get done. And then at Mighty TV, what we needed to focus on was not running out of money. So it's like very, very different things that different companies are going to focus on. And this wide range of skills are things that, from the buzzwords that you've heard or things that you've heard from other people, they are important, yes, don't get me wrong, but they're always going to be ordered in a different arrangement. So I included this slide because it kind of shows you that a lot of people perceive the role in many different ways. A lot of my friends think that, yeah, I'm basically just like pushing papers all the time. My mom thinks I'm Steve Jobs, like, you know, doing like crazy important things. Most people feel like I'm that guy from Office Space that, you know, needs to have like a shirt and tie all the time. But yeah, and like what I think I do is just like make stuff work, and like, you know, while sacrificing my own health. And then, you know, what I actually do is like sometimes you just have no idea what you're doing. But what you need to do for the team is actually provide clarity and figure out what you've heard from leadership, what you've heard from the business side, and give them some sort of guiding light in order to focus on what they're doing in the future. But if I had to consolidate it and say, like, you know, these are the 4 qualities that I've seen every product manager do in varying degrees, here are a couple of them. Identifying customers and stakeholders. It is extremely important to figure out who your customer is. I know this sounds very simple, but it's actually not that simple. Because you might think that you're trying to solve a problem for a specific group, but then you realize that they have that problem because they need to answer it to another group. But sometimes you can maybe bypass that group altogether and save everyone a ton of time. This happens all the time, and a lot of these examples, what you need to do is like go to your customer and ask them, what is the problem? What bothers you? What makes your day difficult? They may say it's like your team, like you're doing something that like we're not exposing data, we're not sharing something very widely, or there's another, the finance team is breathing down my neck because I need to show them these reports on a monthly basis so that the CEO can understand we're losing money. These are important things to identify. Figuring out who your customer really is one of the most important things to start from. What is the difference between a customer and a stakeholder? Customer is someone who you're providing the benefit for. Stakeholders are folks who you need to work with and are going to be partners along the way. So what you need to do is usually corral and rally up the stakeholders to say, we need to solve a problem for our customer. Because if we do this, our lives are going to be easier all together. because of X, Y, and Z. Identifying your customers and stakeholders, extremely important, because you need to know who is the team that you're about to work with. Second thing, I get this question a lot from new product managers. I'm about to start my new job. What is the first thing I should do as soon as I join the company? I tell them, number one, figure out your customer. The second thing, what is like that ultimate deliverable that everyone expects from a product manager? Deliver a product roadmap. What does it mean to deliver a product roadmap? Have a quarterly system where you say we're in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and list out features that you're going to roll out at those times. This does not mean make stuff up on the fly. It means talk to your customers and stakeholders, take a list of all the problems that they have, and then map out based on what you know from your stakeholder and engineering team of the resources that are available to you, and map out what's going to require low effort or high effort and provide low effort or high impact. What you want to do at the very beginning is optimize for those low effort and high impact things, and then you move throughout the spectrum as you go later and later on. When you go like 3 to 4 quarters out, you can plan for those very large, long-term projects that are going to solve a very systemic need. But sometimes at the very beginning, you need to deliver those quick wins so that you can gain trust from your stakeholders as well. Another thing, third, this is something that actually was on a call the other day to talk about. What are the metrics for success? The product manager is usually responsible for telling everyone, if we meet this number or if we do these things, this will mean that we're successful. What are some typical key metrics that you think product managers will list out? Revenue, yes, that's actually a very important number. Sometimes it's like the top number for some companies. Sometimes it's in the middle. Other metrics.
Daily average users?
Daily average user, yes. Monthly average user, daily active user, weekly average user. You're going to hear MAU, M-A-U, DAU, D-A-U, WOW. No one ever said WOW. But these are things that are very important because you want to figure out how many folks are using your products for user adoption, but engagement is actually very important as well. So if someone uses your product and never comes back, it's not a sign of a successful product. If they use your product and then they come back, it means that you're actually providing a real benefit to them. There's actually a very interesting statistic from when Facebook first started. They said that the key to having a like a lifetime user of Facebook is they need to add at least 7 friends. Because once they do that, they're going to find value for when they go back. So in the very beginning, I don't know if you remember this, but when we first joined Facebook, there was a ton of suggestions about people who you should have. They knew they needed to do that so that you continue using the product. Fourth, guarantee the success of the product. The product manager is the ultimate catch-all net for any failure that occurs. What does this mean in practice? Anytime there's something wrong with it, anytime someone has a question about it, anytime someone wants to complain about it, they're going to come find you. You are going to be the meat shield for the engineering team. That's actually the best piece of product manager advice I've ever received in my career so far. I had a mentor that I worked with at Google. She was a product manager at the time. I think now she's probably a senior product manager. No, when I was working with her, she was a senior. Now she's probably a director. She told me the most blunt and honest advice from product manager ever. She said, as a product manager, you are the meat shield for the engineering team from the business and sales stuff. What you need to do is take all of that crust, take all the yelling, take all the complaints, and process it, distill it, and figure out what's going on and what you need to do next. Feedback, whether it's positive or negative, is always a gift. Because if they didn't tell you, you'd have no idea what's going on. All right, one last thing. This is actually a diagram that explains a lot about the principles of product management. Usually, there's a combination of you want to represent the technology side by working with the engineering team. You want to represent the business side by talking to the leadership organization, the financial department, and basically what's going on from the competition outside of your company. And you also need to represent the UX side. Is my feature, app, service easy to use, or is it incredibly difficult? Who's used? Can anyone list out like an extremely frustrating experience of service that they've used in the past? Instacart. Okay, why? Why was Instacart difficult to use?
Apparently I ordered one single banana.
Okay.
Opposed to a bundle.
Okay.
It wasn't clear to me.
So if I ever heard that as a product manager, I would say that the user is always right. So the fact that you like ran through this difficulty or complication means that the product was not designed in the best way. And this is something that product managers are always like It's very easy to spot out with product managers because when they look at a service owner, it's like, oh, that's like kind of confusing. It's not a very good user experience. You know, these are things that they're really going to want to focus on. So the combination of these three areas is where product management needs to be. I would say that if you had to only pick one because you have a very strong representation across like a mature organization, you're going to want to lean on the business side because in the end, the money like goes into everyone's paychecks. And they want to make sure like this keeps on flowing in. Usually the business side wants to connect into the technology side because they just can't talk. The two sides are literally like Romeo and Juliet, like two warring families. They just don't speak the same language. The UX is always going to be your best friend because they're going to make all the conversations easy. UX designers help facilitate the nature and the practice of communication. All right, very important topic. I always get this question, technical versus non-technical PMs. Do you need to be technical to be a product manager? Raise your hand if you think yes. Raise your hand if you think no. All right, I'm here to tell you that you do not need to be technical to be a product manager. I will say though, it's always very helpful to be technical. However, being technical can also be a double-edged sword. Because if you're technical as a product manager and you start working with an engineering team, you may or may not do their job as a result. And the engineers are not there to have you tell them how to do their job. Because chances are, they do it much better than you can. But what they want to do is have someone who understands the daily hardships that they're going through. This is usually the ultimate reason of why people say, I want a technical product manager. I will tell you, like for myself, I do not consider myself a very technical product manager, but I work in data infrastructure products, which is usually known as like a very technical field. But what I can tell you is I'm very, very familiar with the services, the different products, the different components that are used throughout the system. A key piece of advice that I received from a VP of engineering at Google is you need to care about what you're really working on. Like for me, I realized that data is like a very strong passion of mine, and like architecture, like data systems are very interesting to me. So whenever I see a diagram about like data warehouse connected to a Kafka connector coming from an input source, and that is sent to like a data visualization product, that is very exciting to me. I love to learn about new technologies that are making this happen. But the main point of this, what I want to convey is, you do not need to be technical to be a product manager. It certainly helps, but if you are technical, you need to understand when you're overstepping on the toes of the technical engineering team as well. The reason why engineers and managers usually want a technical product manager is because they want someone who understands that just to backfill something. Backfill means like you have a certain amount of data and then there's like stuff historically in the back that hasn't existed before. You need to replace all that. It sounds probably pretty easy, right? Like finding information, just plug it back in. It's actually very difficult to do that. And most product managers do not realize that. So when they hear, oh yeah, let's backfill this thing, they'll send us, hey, can we backfill this thing for the past 3 years? An engineer will see that and be like, what the literal F is going on? Like this guy or girl has no idea about what is involved. They basically need to figure out what data source is coming from. They need to figure out what's going on with the existing information. They need to purge that data. They need to create a new container, and they need to load it in a way that doesn't interfere with any of the systems that are going on. It's actually a horrible process. And I learned this the hard way because I actually pinged someone back in the past saying like, hey, can you do this backfill? It's like, no, I can't just do that. And I told them, okay, we have it done like by the end of the day. And they laughed at me. They said like, this is something that actually takes a couple of weeks, especially depending upon the size of the data. So the main point is, it helps if you're technical, but if you're too technical, sometimes it interferes with what's going on. So the most important thing about the product manager is you need to represent the voice of the customer. That's what the engineers are always depending on you on, because more likely than not, the engineers don't want to be in any of the meetings that you're in. And they want to be able to, for you, someone who understands their lingo, to tell them, oh yeah, like this user is really pissed off because their login credentials are not working. So we might need to have an easier flow for them to register. Like who hates putting in passwords and remembering passwords? Yeah, so basically a product manager needs to come and say, you know, like users keep putting in a password, it's really hard to remember. But you know what's not like very difficult to remember? Your fingerprint or your face, because you can't really change. So maybe we need to have another authentication mechanism. So yes, you do not need to be technical to be a product manager. All right, so there are many different types of product managers, which is like the main focus of my talk. Can anyone tell me what this background image is from? Or anyone recognize this background image? It's from a recent HBO series. Westworld, right? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So this is like Bernard's like computer where like they pull out different hosts hosts. The hosts were like robots. What happens is here, you can see like there's a circular diagram of different characteristics, right? Decisiveness, patience, self-preservation, cruelty, whatever. The point of putting this diagram up here is that product management has a bunch of different characteristics, and they're usually shared amongst this. So you can replace with like prioritization, road mapping, stakeholder management, whatever. Data, understanding, technical ability. Every different company is going to have a different representation of this circular, this thing within, because they have different needs as an organization. I'll tell you that the things I did within Google, things I did within Spotify, things I did within WeWork are very different. They're vastly different. Actually, what I need to do in the first few months whenever I join is figure out what are the real needs of the organization. There are many different types of product managers. Who's heard of a product marketing manager before? Who's heard of a growth product manager? Who's heard of a business product manager? Business product manager is also known as tech. Who's heard of a technical product manager? Who's heard of a data product manager? These are all different things that companies are going to need. Obviously, from the terms that I described before, some require more technical understanding than others, but it doesn't mean that you need to have a computer science degree. I believe that there's going to be more and more popping up in the future as well. I strongly believe that there's going to be a legal product manager, a finance product manager, because of things like GDPR and all these like encryption, security, privacy things that are occurring. It might even be a privacy product manager. But what I'm here to tell you is that there are many different types of product management, and do not feel pigeonholed because you do not have a computer science degree. Figure out what your strengths are. What are things that you feel very comfortable in doing? For me, it was like looking at data, interpreting it, figuring out what that means. For me also, I love giving presentations. I don't know if you all can tell from what I'm doing right now, but I also love giving presentations. So I knew I wanted to be more of a like an outward-facing, evangelizing, sharing data infrastructure, telling other teams that you want to use our platform and our system, and it's going to save you a bunch of time. So, different types I described before. A product marketing manager is usually an evangelist, and he or she will go figure out what's going on in the competition, figure out what the company should work on, and promote that within and without the company. That is their core strength. Product marketing managers usually work very closely with product managers as well as the marketing team and sales team. Business product managers are usually figuring out what's going on in the outside competition, and they're strictly focused on the features, like the things that are delivered from a user interface perspective. They don't care as much about the technical underpinnings of how things work. Data product managers need to figure out if data sets are clean, if they're well structured, and if they're easily consumable by different teams. And growth product marketing managers usually have only one goal. They need to drive a certain number, whether it's revenue or a subscriber base. Usually it's a subscriber base. And growth product managers are usually really good at social media marketing. So as you can see, there's many different types of product managers that exist. And when you're applying for a role, try to figure out what that role, what discipline it really falls into. I can tell you most of the time if you ask an interviewer what type of product manager this is, they most likely will not be able to give you like a very good representation of that. But what you can do is ask them what are the key responsibilities that you will need to handle, and what are some of the problems that you're facing as an organization right now. That will usually shed some light into what is the type of product manager that you need to be. In closing, I wanted to go over a couple of points that are relevant. So I started to tell you a little bit about myself and my history. I told you about what a typical product manager does. Usually, it's a bunch of buzzwords all over the place, and there are things that you need to focus on, but they're going to be in different priorities based on what company you go to. You need to understand your customers and stakeholders when you come with a product like that. You need to figure out what key metrics, KPIs, and the metrics of success are, and you need to guarantee the success of your product. We talked about technical versus non-technical product managers. You do not need to be technical to be a product manager. I repeat, you do not need to be technical to be a product manager. It certainly helps. Sometimes it can be a double-edged sword. And number three, there are many different types of product managers. There are business product managers, growth product managers, data product managers, product marketing managers, product managers, technical product managers. And you can figure out where your strengths are and draw towards different disciplines that you want to go into. So that, in closing, is basically all that I had to